Hello, today we'll do a poem called Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945 by Vikram Seth. So the poem says, the morning stretched calm, beautiful, and warm. Sprawling, half clad, I gazed out at the form of shimmering leaves and shadows. So the poem begins with the narrator, who is probably a doctor, uh, begins with the narrator who is probably a doctor in the morning. In a morning, the morning is calm, beautiful, and warm, and he's sprawling. Sprawling means he's lying on the bed with his legs spread out, and he's half clad. Perhaps he's wearing only the bottom half of his pajamas and a dressing gown, and he's lying on the bed and he gazes out at the form of shimmering leaves and shadows. So outside in the garden, the leaves are shimmering or shining with the reflection of the sunshine, and there are shadows of trees and plants in the garden. Suddenly, a strong flash, then another, startled me. So, in the distance, he sees a flash of light. It's a huge flash of light, and it's followed by another, and this startles or shocks him. I saw the old stone lantern brightly lit, magnesium flares. So he thinks perhaps there are flares because in 1945 it was the time of the Second World War. So in the Second World War, there were all sorts of battles going on, and to show the position of troops on the ground, they would fire a flare. Flare is like a flame made of, and this flare is made of magnesium. Magnesium is a metal which burns very brightly when lit. So he thinks that that flash of light which he saw is from a magnesium flare. While I debated it, the roof, the walls, and as it seemed, the world collapsed in timber and debris. Dust swirled around me in the garden now, and weird, my drawers and undershirt disappeared. So while he was thinking about what that flash could be, suddenly what happens is the roof of his house, the walls of his house, and even the world, as it seemed to the narrator, collapsed. His house was made of wood, so it collapses in timber. Timber is logs of wood, which with which the house was built. So the house collapses in timber and debris. Debris is rubble, bits of stone, bits of glass, bits of wood. So the house collapses and dust spun around in the wind around him. And in the garden now, so the whole house collapsed into the garden. And as he's looking on, his drawers, that is his underpants and his undershirt, disappeared. So what has happened is that that flash which the narrator saw was from the atomic explosion which took place in either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. So the flash which occurred about 1 mile above the ground, that point is called ground zero. The atomic bomb was detonated about 1 mile above the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it caused a very bright light, and the air, which was superheated, it flowed away from the explosion and vaporized everything in its path. So as the narrator looks on, his drawers and his undershirt disappeared from him. a splinter jutted from my mangled thigh. So a piece of wood came out from his thigh. So the whole house has been reduced to absolute rubble, and there's bits of debris flying everywhere, bits of glass, bits of iron, bits of wood, and through his wounded thigh, a splinter of wood came out. My right side bled, so his right side was bleeding. My cheek was torn, and I dislodged detachedly a piece of glass, all the time wondering what had come to pass. So he takes out a piece of glass from himself. The piece of glass has lodged itself into his body, and he doesn't know at all what has happened, and so he's detached about it. He impersonally removed the piece of glass, and he's wondering in his mind what had happened. Where was my wife? Alarmed, I gave a shout. Where are you? Yeko sang. My blood gushed out. So suddenly he thinks of his wife and he feels concern for her. Her name is Yako-san, and so he calls out to her, and as he's calling out, his blood flows out. The artery in my neck. So he's a doctor. He thinks whether the artery, that is the blood vessel which carries blood to and from the heart, is been severed, and the blood is gushing out from the artery in his neck. He thinks. Scared for my life, I called out, panic stricken, to my wife. So in this fear, he seeks some consolation in the company of his wife. He's panic stricken. He's absolutely overcome by fright. So he calls out to his wife. Pale, blood-stained, frightened Yako-san emerged. So his wife comes out from wherever in the house she was, holding her elbow. We'll be fine, I urged. So when he sees his wife, he feels comforted, and he consoles her. He says, "We'll be fine. Let's get out quickly." Stumbling to the street, we fell, tripped by something at our feet. So they stumble over the pieces of wood and stone and glass into the street, and then they fall because they hit something with their foot which was at their feet. I gasped out when I saw it was a head. So the thing that is tripped over is only the head of a person. Excuse me, please excuse me. He was dead. So his habit of being polite makes him say that he's sorry that he touched that, but it's only a head. So he sees that he was dead. A gate had crushed him. So probably the person was standing under an iron gate. The explosion occurred, and the gate fell on him, and his head was severed from his body. There we stood, afraid. Our house standing before us tilted, swayed, toppled, and crushed. So a house which was in front of them tilted, it swung to one side, it shook from side to side, it swayed, and then it collapsed, it toppled and crashed. Fire sprang up in the dust. So the gas lines, which were underneath the pavement, the gas connections which were underneath the pavement of the city, suddenly caught fire, and the pavement exploded in fire. Spread by the wind, it dawned on us we must get to the hospital. So he thinks that they must go to the hospital. We needed aid, and I should help my staff too. So even now he thinks of his duty as a doctor. They needed help themselves. They needed aid themselves, and he should help his staff too in this dangerous situation. Though this made sense to me then, I wonder how I could. So that's a matter of habit. It made sense to him then, but now he wonders how he could have thought of such a thing. My legs gave way, so his legs lose their strength, and he sits on the ground, he collapses. I sat down on the ground. Thirst seized me, but no water could be found. So, for some reason or the other, he becomes overcome by thirst, but he could not find any water. My breath was short, but bit by bit my strength seemed to revive. So he gasps in his breath, he gasps in short bursts, but then as he rests, his strength seemed to revive, and I got up at length. I was still without clothes, but I felt no shame. So he still didn't have any clothes on him, but he didn't feel any shame. This thought disturbed me somewhat till I came upon a soldier standing silently who gave the towel round his neck to me. My legs stiffened with dried blood rubbered. So the fact that he didn't have any clothes on his body disturbed him till he walks further and further and he comes across a soldier who's wearing a towel round his neck, and the soldier gives that towel to him. But his legs, which were bleeding and the blood had dried, so his legs could not support him, so and they rebelled. I said to Yakusan, she must go on ahead. So he urges his wife to reach safety, and he asks her to go ahead, go on further up the road. She did not wish to, but in her distress, what choice had we? So she did not want to leave him, but in the problematic situation, they didn't have any choice. A dreadful loneliness came over me when she had gone. So when the comforting presence of his wife left him, he became extremely he felt extreme loneliness, and my mind ran at high speed, my body crept behind. So his mind races, what could he do, what should be done, where should he go, and he thinks along such lines. His mind races, but his body creeps behind. I saw the shadowy forms of people. Some were ghosts, some scarecrows, all were wordless dumb. So he sees people shuffling in the distance ahead. They were shadowy, and some were like ghosts. They were shuffling along with their heads down and their feet hardly rising as they walked, and their hands were hanging by their side, and they had a vacant look in their faces. And some were like ghosts, some were like scarecrows. Scarecrows, that is, they looked extremely deformed. Their hair was all standing on end, and they all were without. They were all were silent. They were wordless, dumb, with the shock which they had received. Arms stretched straight out, shoulder to dangling hand. So their arms were stretched straight out. They were in a state of shock and disbelief, and as the arms were stretched out, their hands hung down. It took some time for me to understand the friction of their burns caused so much pain. So the friction caused by the rubbing of the arms against the side of the body made them hold out their hands so that the hands dangled. So the friction which hurt them so much caused so much pain. They feared to chafe flesh against flesh. So they feared to rub their own flesh against the flesh on the sides of their body. Those who could shuffled in a blank parade toward the hospital. So those who could walk shuffled. Shuffled means they walked without raising their feet. They just scraped the ground and they walked towards the hospital in a blank parade. They were all ve- extremely quiet, did not say a word. They were in a state of shock, and they shuffled towards the hospital. I saw dismayed a woman with a child stand in my path. So a woman with a child stands in the path of the narrator, both without clothes. Had they come back from the bath? So he thinks that perhaps the woman was having a bath when the explosion occurred, and she still had a child in her arms. I turned my gaze, but was at a loss that she should stand thus, till I came across a man without clothes. And now the thought arose that some strange thing had stripped us of our clothes. So he sees a woman with an infant in her arms without clothes, both were without clothes, and then she's standing naked in the street, and he doesn't understand, he's at a loss to understand. Then he sees a man without clothes, and now he thinks, how could their clothes be removed from their bodies without their knowledge, and how could they be standing naked in the streets? So, what strange thing had occurred? He still doesn't realize that the nuclear explosions have taken place. The face of an old woman on the ground was marred with suffering. So there was an old woman on the ground, and her face was distorted, it was twisted by suffering, but she made no sound. So she's not even whimpering, she's not even making a sound in her throat. She's silently suffering. Silence was common to us all, so everyone there is absolutely quiet. I heard no cries of anguish or a single word. He did not even hear a cry of anguish, a cry of pain, and he did not hear a single word. So they're all dumbstruck at what has happened, and that is the end of the poem. Thank you.